Says we're live. This is my seminar in absence of the Minnesota Musky Expo. I'm here for the Thorn Brothers page, and today we're going to be talking about bucktails. Advanced Bucktail Strategies is the name of this seminar. So I've got a handful of different baits laid out here, and we're going to go through anything from components to rod angles, retrieves, basically anything and everything that has to do with bucktails. We're going to try and go through all of this stuff for you guys.
Maybe just wait till some people come on.
We got 12. Yeah, we got 12 people right now. We got a couple comments coming through. I'll be able to see your guys' comments. I'm going to go down on my computer here next to me so I can see your guys' comments coming in. And if you guys have any questions throughout it, just comment them down below. Obviously, I can see them here. I've kind of got a couple sections I want to get through, and then I'll kind of answer questions, go back, and we'll address those. But like I say, this is all about bucktails. I chose this topic because bucktails are, I think, every musky angler's favorite way to catch them. These baits catch more fish than anything else in the industry. And there's a lot of little things that go into bucktails themselves that what makes them so good, and reasons why you need to have a variety of different bucktails in your arsenal. So like I said, this is advanced musky tactics, or I should say advanced bucktail tactics for muskies. And we're going to get into some really, really in-depth stuff here. So I'm excited to share this with you guys. We got 50-some people going right now, so let's jump into this thing right away. So first off, like I said, in this section, we're going to talk about like retrieve speeds, rod angles, equipment, components, skirt materials, hooks, weights, basically anything and everything, like I said, has to do with bucktails. So we're going to get into that. First off, I want to start with retrieves, okay? There's obviously, you always hear the term of burning blades or slow rolling blades, and I kind of want to talk about where I use those, different presentations in different scenarios. And for me, slow rolling blades is super, super effective, especially after dark. That's, you always hear about slow rolling blades at dark. And there's certain bucktails that I think do a better job of being fished after dark than other ones. And we're going to get into that once we get into components. But slow rolling blades for me is super effective. It's super crucial after dark, and I really, really like to do it even during the daytime sometimes as well in certain situations. But slow rolling is something that if you guys are not doing, you need to be doing that. Change up your speed. That is the biggest thing you can do, is change up your speed in your retrieves. The next one I would say is kind of a moderate pace. You're not really straining yourself by any means. You're just, the blades are spinning, you're getting that bait back to the boat. This is the one speed that I try and shy away from. I think it's, bucktails can be almost so monotonous that you just cast it out and reel it in. So I think a lot of times people get in the same routine or rhythm to just reel the blades in at the same speed. And it's kind of, I don't want to say boring, but there's not much life to the bait at that point. There's really not a rhyme or reason. So I try to, I call it moderate speed, and I try to eliminate that from my boat. I don't like to see that in my boat. If I see a customer reeling too slow, I'll try and get them to either pick the speed up, or if I want them to slow roll, I'll tell them to slow down a little bit as well. So that moderate stuff I try and stay away from. It's just, it happens way too much. Everyone's reeling that speed. I should say probably 90% of the anglers are reeling at that speed. So I try to avoid that at all. Next is fast, or what I would call a fast retrieve. Fast is, you've got your blades out there, it's strenuous, you can definitely feel the pull from the blades, you're moving that bait quick. This is a super good tactic. I like to fish my blades really, really fast. I think it gets fish charged up, I think it gets their attention, and like I say, it's something different as far as the retrieve speed, what a lot of other anglers are doing. So if you can throw a bucktail at a fast speed all day long, you're gonna see more fish, and you're gonna catch more fish. And like I said, we can get into figure eights and stuff like that, but I'm gonna try and stick to just the bucktail stuff as far as that. And the last one is burning. Burning in my case is basically every single cast you're reeling this bait in as fast as you possibly can, and your only downtime or the only relax you get is when your bait's going back out on the cast. And as soon as that bait hits the water, you're engaging your reel, you're diving your rod tip down the water, and you are literally just winding on that thing as hard as you can. And this is super effective when I spend time up in Lake of the Woods, as well as the little bit of time I get to spend in Minnesota. These fish react really, really well to blades being burned. And it's just a reaction thing. Like I say, a lot of people are not throwing baits this fast or reeling baits this fast. and it's a different, you know, approach to how fish look at bucktails. So if the first thing I suggest to people is change up the speed of your retrieve. That's the easiest thing to do. You can do, like I say, all 4 of these different retrieves with the same exact bait. So it's really important, I think, to be able to burn your baits if nothing's going. Like dead flat and sunny, I've seen a lot of comments. I've been watching all these seminars throughout the weekend, and everyone's asking, what do you do when it's dead flat and sunny? For me, I want to try and get a fish's attention because they're probably neutral and negative. They don't really want to do anything. I want to rip a bait by them as fast as I possibly can. And what that also does is it allows me to cover a lot of water very quickly. So I'm also going to eliminate, you know, I'm going to go and fish more spots, and I have a better chance of running into more fish by, you know, burning that bait as fast as I can, covering a lot of water, making a lot of casts. So burning blades is super, super crucial. All right, next thing I want to talk about is rod angle. Okay, rod angle is something, and line angle, that you guys need to be thinking about constantly when you're on the water. Like I said, there's a lot of these little things that can make a big difference. Rod angle being, if you're trying to burn your blades, generally you want to point that rod tip directly down your line, right at your bait. Let the reel do the work. That's going to be the easiest thing for your wrist, and also, like I say, the longevity of you either burning a blade, or if you're throwing some really big 12s and stuff like that. It makes it a lot easier if you point the rod tip directly at the bait and just let the reel do the work, okay? Second, rod tip high. Now this is an angle where you're going to be elevated a little bit, your line's going to come, your rod tip might be elevated, and your line's going to go down to your bait. This could be a scenario if you're fishing over really shallow weeds or shallow rocks and you need to keep that bait up high. If you want to boil those blades right onto the surface, this rod angle is very helpful and can trigger some strikes as well. If you keep that rod tip high, use that to your advantage. You can maybe fish a heavier bait shallower, or you can fish, like I say, you know, some of the blades that don't pull as hard or don't have as much lift, you can keep them up higher and you don't have to reel them as fast, okay? So rod tip high, that angle can be super crucial at times as well. Next one is rod tip in the water, and I don't see a lot of people do this, and I think it's something that a lot of people should be doing. If you're fishing deeper cover and you're trying to fish, you know, over deep weed lines or deep rock humps, take your rod tip buried in the water. Cover up 2-3 feet of your rod tip, get your rod tip down on an angle, and then your line is going to go out to your bait. This is going to decrease the angle and how high your bait's riding in the water column, as well as it's going to gain you more depth on your cast. Right, so putting your rod tip in the water can be super crucial and can definitely get the bait more in the strike zone for those fish that maybe are hanging a little bit deeper if you're fishing deeper cover, like I say. The next thing, and I noticed this a lot in the last few years of guiding, and I started to see we were getting a lot of bites like 15 to 20 feet from the boat, and I couldn't figure out why, right? That fish has been following the bait for who knows how long, and finally it just occurred to me, when you make your cast, okay, and your bait hits the water, you're going to have this swing of your bait as it comes into the boat. Okay, once you get about 2/3 of the way back, and you're over here fishing in your boat, this bait is going to start to come up towards you. Okay, you're going to get that swing in that line angle, and a lot of these fish were hitting that bait as soon as it started to come up. Right? It's almost like if you're ice fishing, you're trying to trigger a fish. As soon as if you see that mark, you're raising that bait up away from that fish, and it triggers them to come up and eat that bait. So pay attention to that, and the other thing you can do with that is, again, take your rod angle halfway through your cast or in the first third of your cast, and instead of pointing it right at your bait or in the water, just take your rod tip, bring it up, and bring it back down. So now what you just did to that bait is your bait's in the water, it's running, all of a sudden it does this, and then it does this, right? And then it comes back to the boat, and then when it starts to get close to the boat, it comes up again. So it's almost like a roller coaster, and it's something that fish don't see in a bucktail presentation. They're used to the bait landing in the water and coming in on a straight line. So that rod angle, rod tip up, rod tip down, kind of moving that bait up and down the water column is super crucial and can definitely get you a couple more bites. The last thing, and I see some guys do this with their figure eight, is when you're coming in, you can call it an S-turn, but sometimes I like to be coming in, and maybe if I'm only halfway back to the boat, just swing the rod tip one way, swing the rod tip the other way, and then come into your figure eight. So your bait's coming in a straight line, also it does this, and then it does this, and then it goes into your eight, right? So instead of that fish just coming in on a straight line, now you're adding some left and right movement that a lot of bucktails or fish that see bucktails don't do that. They don't see people doing that. So that can be something to trigger a strike for you halfway back to the boat or get more fish to bite out on the cast versus right at the boat. Maybe if you're fishing really clear water, that's something to look into. Or if you're not super confident at the boat and you just like hooking your fish further away from the boat, try that stuff. You'll eliminate some falls and hopefully you'll get those strikes out away from the boat. Last little clip here, and then I'm going to get into some questions. I know we got a lot of comments coming through, so the last thing I want to talk about before we get really into the components of the baits, that's going to be the really meat and potatoes of this, and what makes all these baits so different. But the last thing is equipment. Okay, rods and reels, line, leader, stuff like that. Me personally, if you guys have not fished the Thorne Brothers rods, they are absolutely incredible. I've fished a lot of them out there, and I'm absolutely blown away with the performance of the rods. They are by far the best rod in the musky industry. Nothing else even comes close. And I'm not just saying that. I honestly believe that. And the new 10-foot models that they came out with last year is amazing. The 10-foot extra heavy, I basically throw for anything that's 9s, 10s, 12s, or bigger. The 10-foot extra heavy, amazing blank. He said it's all custom. You can build it however you want it. And then for the smaller stuff, my single-bladed stuff, double 7s, double 8s, and even some of my like 8/8 staggers, those I prefer to fish on it's a 9'11" heavy -1. So it's a heavy blank. They cut an inch off the tip because it makes it a little bit stiffer. But then instead of the rod being 10 foot, now it's 9'11". So those are the two bucktail rods that I constantly have in my boat. The extra heavy actually doubles as an amazing rubber rod. If you're only looking to buy two rods, I think the two ideal ones is the 10-foot extra heavy. You can, like I say, throw a lot of big blades on that. You can throw some jerk baits or pull pause stuff with that. Big rubber, I throw pounders on that rod as well. So that rod kind of does everything. And then the heavy -1 is great for a lot of top waters, maybe twitching small minnow baits, and then the smaller blades as well. So if I had to pick two rods, those would be the two: 9'11" heavy -1, 10-foot extra heavy. Incredible rods. So I've got a bunch of videos too. If you guys don't know, I have a YouTube channel with a ton of musky information on it. It's called Doug Wegner Fishing. I've got links or tips on rods and reels and basically anything you can think of. You guys can go check that out if you've got more questions on that or want more information on it. Next thing is reels. I am a big Daiwa guy. I made this switch from Marabou probably 4 years ago now, or 5 years ago. And I've been super happy with what they're coming out with. The Daiwa Alexa HD 400s have been my go-to reel the last 4 years. They've been absolutely amazing. Really like the reel. The coolest thing with those is that you get a super long cast. I don't care what reel you put it next to. I've fished with a bunch of people, a bunch of really good anglers that have different brands of reels. And honestly, the Daiwa's just, you get like an extra 25% cast distance out of it. So if you need to make a long cast, if you're fishing, maybe a shallow cover, the Daiwas just seem to outcast anything else. They're just smoother, they cast further. I've had literally like zero issues with them unless it's operator error. But the reels have stood up really well for me. And then they actually are coming out with a new Prorex Reel, which I got to test last fall for 2 months. I only got to throw rubber with it because I got it in November. I fished it in November and December, but that reel is going to be absolutely amazing as well. I think Thorne's going to get those in around April 1st, and I think they're getting all shipped out around April 1st, so that's super exciting. That reel, I'm really excited to fish for the Bucktails. They have the new T-wing system, which is really cool. If you guys have not seen that, they carried it over from their bass line, and it's basically a much larger airway for your line to travel through. So if you're throwing really light baits or really small stuff, now instead of your line, rubbing against your worm gear, your line guide, I should say, there's a much more larger airway, so you're not going to have that friction, and you're actually going to even get a further cast. And it's a little bit smaller profile. I know some people don't like the Lex HD 400s because they think they're a little bit bigger. They're bigger than maybe your 400 Tranks, and even bigger than the Beasts. But this new one is a little bit smaller size. I shouldn't say a lot smaller, but a little bit smaller size, a little bit more ergonomic, and it fits really nice in your hand. I'm really excited to get that reel and fish it with some blades this spring. But regardless, that's the two reels that I like. As far as gear ratios, I should touch on that quick too. The Alexa HD 400s, they have 4 gear ratios, which is cool. They have a 5.1 to 1, 6.3, 7.1, 8.1. Okay, so anything you can possibly think of. The two that I kind of reach for is a 5.1. That one's super good for the really big blades. It gives you a ton of power, a ton of torque, and you can retrieve those really big baits with ease. And then if you're looking to burn blades, I really like the 7.1s. Those are really good. You can bring in a ton of line with them. absolutely scream those baits past the fish. And both those reels, again, double. The 7.1 doubles as a great rubber rod, or rubber reel, I should say. And then the 5.3, I think, doubles as a great topwater rod. I like a lower gear ratio for my topwaters. It just helps me slow down and fish my topwaters. So, you know, multi-purpose for the rods and the reels. As far as line, I fish 80-pound Seagar thread lock. I started fishing it last year. I really do like this stuff. I fished 80-pound on my straight retrieve reels, and then I fished 100-pound on my pull pause stuff. Just a little bit lighter line gets you a little bit deeper, smaller diameter. It'll get your bait down a little bit deeper. And on a straight retrieve bait, I wasn't so much worried about having 100, just due to the fact that when you're working a pull pause bait, you might have a slack line and you really jam that hook home. So I wanted a 100-pound test on those. But thread lock has been really good. Now, the important thing, or one of the more important things, is your leader. Okay, if you guys watch the channel or, you know, have been following me at all, I came up with my own line of leaders last year with a company called Leaders and Lures out of Illinois. Gene has been in business for forever, put it that way. He's been around forever. But I came up with a line of leaders, and I fish wire on my leaders for bucktails. Solid wire, 174-pound single strand wire. And we make 6-inch and 9-inch models for bucktail leaders. Or you can use them as jerkbait leaders as well, obviously. But I really, really like them for bucktails. We offer them in a stay lock option or a welded ring. I'm personally a welded ring guy. I've got a split ring on all my baits, and then there's no worries about snaps breaking or failing. I'm personally a split ring guy. So those add in some extra vibration, whereas fluorocarbon leaders really kill your vibration. You get all this hum and this noise out of the shaft of your wire, and then when it hits a piece of fluorocarbon, it basically just dies. Whereas when it actually connects to another piece of wire, you'll get some more life out of it. You'll get a little bit extra sound, vibration. It's pretty cool to see. Actually, if you're throwing some of the stagger baits, you'll see that leader just shaking and quivering in the water, and that's definitely doing something. And it's something that a lot of guys aren't using because they feel, I don't know, that everything has to be fluorocarbon. They think muskies can see a leader, and I honestly I don't believe in that very much at all, personally. I mean, we're throwing a bait that has, you know, a big shaft or a big piece of wire coming out of it. They're not going to worry about another very, very small diameter piece of wire. But the 174-pound wire is what I fish on all my bucktails. Like I say, the 6-inch or 9-inch models, it's completely up to you. Okay, so let's go through some questions real quick. I kind of went on a big rant there. And then, like I say, we're going to get into the baits themselves and the components. So we got some the really good stuff is we're just going to get to that. But I wanted to cover those basics. If you guys have any questions, throw them in here quick. I'm going to scroll back and see what we got here. Tatula 400. Not sure. I've not heard of anything about a Daiwa Tatula 400. So they make a Tatula in their bass line. They make a 100 and a 200. The Prorex is what I would call their Tatula 400, but the Prorex was specifically made for musky fishing. It's not a bass crossover reel. It's not a saltwater crossover reel. It was strictly made for musky fishing, and it offers the T-wing system, which is a really nice part about their Tatula bass reels, is that offers the T-wing system as well. So I haven't heard anything about a Tatula 400, but I would call that the Prorex 400, is what I would say. Casting further, someone said be nice for casting further. Absolutely. If you get some really light baits or some really small stuff, or you're fishing maybe deer hair or marabou, sometimes those baits can be really hard to throw any kind of distance. Let's see. How many rod reel setups do you have with you on the boat at one time? Quite a few. I mean, being a full-time guide, I've got to carry a good amount of equipment. I've got to have left-handed reels. I've got to have right-handed reels. I think last year I had 6 of the 10-foot extra heavies and 4 of the heavy -1. So I had 10 rods. I didn't always carry all 10. Once I got into summer and I knew I wasn't going to be throwing the smaller baits, I wasn't carrying the heavy -1s. But generally I'll have at least 2 rods per angler, if not 3 to 4. Yeah, I'm reading questions right now. Matching leader with bait. I did a video on that. That's a pretty lengthy topic. I did a video on that on my YouTube channel. If you guys want to go look at that after this, I kind of went through all the different styles of baits and what leaders I recommend for each one. For spring, would you say more slow or fast speeds for bucktails? Just depends on the location. I think it definitely depends on the location, as well as water temperature. If you've got really quick rising water temps, I think you probably want to go a little faster. If you're experiencing maybe a cold front or some cooler water temperatures, you probably want to slow down a little bit. It shows on here that we're having trouble playing the video, but there it still says we're good. So
I can see it.
okay, so we're good. Clear water, do you use wire line to, what kind of leader do you use for a pounder? So in clear water, I think you mean the wire leader. I still use the wire leader no matter what. If I'm throwing a bucktail, it's on a wire leader. The 174 pound ones that we make, it's on a wire leader. I don't care if you can see 40 feet down. I'm throwing it on a wire leader. The wire leader adds so much life to the bucktail, sound, vibration, stuff like that. Leader for a pounder, we also make a what's called a 49 strand wire. It's basically a flexible cable. It's 130 pounds, and it eliminates any possible bite offs. I know some people, once I came out with my line of leaders and offered the 49 strand, I had a bunch of people reach out and say they've had fish bite through 130, 150 pound fluorocarbon, and especially with the rubber baits, those really large baits, those fish generally try and hit them in the head. So having that wire leader is just insurance. The fish isn't possibly able to bite through it because it's wire, but it's still flexible because it is a stranded cable. So it fishes a lot like fluorocarbon, but it has the strength that fluorocarbon does not. And all those leaders are available at Thorn Brothers. They've got obviously a great sale going on this weekend, along with everything and all the seminars for the Minnesota Musky Expo. So Thorn has basically all the baits I'm going to be talking about. They have all the leaders, all the components that you guys could possibly need. So if you need any of that, thornbros.com will have you covered. I think I'm caught up on comments unless my computer is behind. Maybe I'll just refresh that once real quick and see. All right. My internet's slow. That's probably because we're streaming. Oh, here's some more maybe. I don't want to listen to myself. All right, are you working bucktails different over cover compared to off the edge drop offs or open water? I think that comes down to retrieve speed, like we talked in the beginning. And there's no, obviously we all know as musky anglers, there's no one rule in musky fishing. So you might have to just try some different stuff, switch up your retrieve speed, like I said, switch up your rod angles, stuff like that, and switch up the components or the baits that you're using. So let's get into the really juicy stuff here. And I called this section Understanding Your Bait, okay? There are a ton of different bucktail companies. It's the most popular bait to make, but there's a ton of features with each one that is different and makes each one unique. So, like I said, we're going to go through basically all the components, what makes up all these different bucktails and what makes each one a little bit different, and some things I see when fish key into one versus the other. The first thing we're going to talk about is wire diameter, okay? The shaft of the wire, we're going to start the basics, okay? So you guys can see, obviously, these baits all run on a single piece of wire, okay? This wire here is 0.51 in diameter, right? Now, wire diameter is very, very important. 0.51 is the most popular, I would say, from a lot of companies, but your wire diameter is going to change the sound of your bait in the water, okay? The thinner your wire diameter, the higher pitched noise you're going to get off of it. The thicker your wire diameter, the lower pitched sound you're going to get in the water. So I basically carry, I think it's 5 different diameters of wire, or baits with different diameters of wire in my boat. A lot of the baits I make myself, I twist on a 325 pound American fishing wire. It's 0.41 in diameter. 0.45 is also a very, very common diameter. I've got a bait here from my friend, one of my buddies, Mike. I believe this one's 0.05 or 0.45. I'm sorry. Obviously, I said 0.51 is the most popular, and then you have the heavier wires like the 0.62, and then also the one company, the only company I know of that carries 0.71 is Spanky. Spanky makes all of his stuff on a 0.71 diameter wire. And it's really an interesting wire because it's really thick, but at the same time it's kind of soft. And I think that adds into, the bait itself or what's about it. But wire diameter is super, super important to pay attention to. Like I say, thinner the wire, higher pitch sounds. Thicker the wire, lower pitch sound in the water. Okay, so that's very important to think about. And like I say, I carry a handful of different baits that have different wire diameters. The next thing is obviously the blades, right? Everyone knows about Colorado blades. Colorado blades are the most popular blade out there. Now, as musky anglers, we've seen the last couple years with baits like the Frenzy Staggers that mixing up blades can be very, very effective. You know, maybe it's a Colorado and an Indiana, maybe it's a willow blades, French blades. There's all kinds of different blades. Obviously, we have the Colorado, like I say, which is very popular. This is the new IC9, so this is number 10 Indiana on the other side of that. We've got baits like, or blades I should say, like large willows. We've got French blades here, okay, small French blades. I don't have any fluted Indianas here. I'm using all my wife's tackle because I'm not at home. Unfortunately, I don't have all my tackle here, but fluted Indiana blades are also super good, and they all throw off a different sound, a different vibration. Colorado blades pull the hardest, willow blades pull the least. You know, your fluted Indianas, and French blades are kind of all in between there. So having a variety of those in your boat is very, very important. Okay. The next thing is blade size. Obviously, you've got really big blades. You can do 13s, 12s, 10s, 9s, 8s, and I'll go down to as small as 7s, right? But all those different sizes have a time and a place. There's something you need to have a few of each. I think if you're really serious about this, just to be able to mix and match, see what the fish want, you know, keep going through all these elements of the bucktail and figure out, you know, what these fish want that particular day. The next is the blade thickness, okay, and this is a very, very important topic. Your standard blade is 0.25 in diameter, okay? So what I'm talking about is the thickness of the side of the blade right here, okay? Your standard blade, or a lot of blades, are 0.25 in diameter. They're a little bit, you know, they're, like I say, your average blade. Now, if you look at a bait like Spanky baits are all built on 0.40 blades, okay? These are a little bit thicker. Okay, they're going to have a little bit lower pitch sound, because again, it's kind of a thickness of your wire. The thinner your blade, the higher the pitch sound. And also with the heavier blades, they're not going to flare out as much, okay, from the side of the bait. Your 0.52 blades are going to be out here, your 0.40 blades are going to be back here. So a double 10 with an 0.25 blade is going to pull a lot harder than a double 10 with 0.40 blades. Okay, that's very important to realize. Now there's been baits that have made with, you know, 0.25, 0.40 blades, but then obviously you've got baits that are just 0.40 and baits that are just 0.25, and then you can get some, like these willow blades are really thin. I'm not sure the diameter on these, but I know they're definitely thinner than 0.25. So thickness of your blade is something very important to pay attention to as well. And like I say, all these elements kind of add up, and it pays to have a variety of them. Blade finish, okay, like I talked a little bit about before, being fluted. Fluted is just, they've got little ribs kind of in the center of the blade. You've obviously got your smooth blade, and then you've also got hex blades. Okay, these are a hex blade here. So it's just a different finish or pattern on the bait itself, and that's going to put off a little bit different sound and vibration. It can be the difference between catching 5 fish or not catching any fish sometimes. So pay attention to that. Sometimes I found lakes that they love hex blades, and I've found lakes where they absolutely will not look at a hex blade, and kind of vice versa. So it's really interesting. It changes lake by lake. They're not just muskies all wired the same. They're definitely different. So play with that. Maybe one lake you fish is good for those specific kinds of blades, and one lake they won't even look at them. The next one is Clevis. Now this is going to take a little bit, because Clevises are basically how your bucktail works. And when I talk about Clevis, I'm talking about the pieces right here, that how you attach your blade to the wire. Now, Clevis size, we'll start with Clevis size. So Clevis sizes, I would say your most standard size is a number 7. 6s are also used quite a bit, and then there's also number 5s. The bigger your Clevises are, the slower your blades are going to spin, okay? So you might have a double 10 with, say, number 7s, and if you put those two same blades on number 5 Clevises, it's going to spin faster with the number 5s and slower with the number 7s. So think of that as well. That's going to change it up. Now, we were fortunate enough to have a guy come out with a very unique Clevis, like nothing else in the industry, and that's the Musky Frenzy Clevis. This is a one-piece Clevis. Okay, it's made on a single piece of Clevis, and Nick, having the background he has in the trades, was able to make this Clevis. So now these baits, or these blades, I should say, at all times are 180 degrees apart. So they're going to start incredible because the blades are never going to collapse. You can run different blade combinations on them and you're not going to have any starting issues. You'll see guys that'll bend the wire, you know, on the eye of the bait to try and get their bait to run, because if you run two offset blades and you do not have that one-piece clevis, your baits are going to want to roll and they're not going to act right. So the one-piece clevis, like I said, is unique to Musky Frenzy. They do an amazing job, and they're really, really a special clevis. He makes them in two-piece models as well as his three-piece model for the triple Apache. So it allows you to run 3 blades as well, which is like anything else in the industry. So that's a different sound and vibration that no one else has. So if you guys, I know I talk about the Frenzy stuff a lot, but it's because I'm a huge believer in it. If you guys have not fished any of the Frenzy stuff, you need to. They will become your best bucktail. They're the best bucktail on the market. They're the hottest bait in musky fishing right now. So that clevis is super, super powerful. The thing with that clevis is that being one piece, it actually spins on the top bead a lot nicer than, say, your standard 2 clevises. Because when you make a double bladed bait with 2 clevises, your clevises are stacked on top of each other. Okay, when you get the rotation, these are going to rub and kind of click or whatever they do. But with the Frenzy clevis, it's one piece, so it's a smooth transition on the bead, and you actually, I think, get a lot more grind out of the bead itself when you have the one piece that's specifically spinning on it instead of 2 pieces that are rotating over it. I think the one piece you get a little bit more grind out of versus the 2 standard clevises. And you'll get some baits that'll get kind of grindy. I've got a couple Frenzies in my boat that I only throw at specific times because they're really like I've wore the bead down so much that you can really feel the blade or the clevis grind the whole way in, and that's been a super good bait for me right at sunset or just after dark. But that bait only comes out at specific times because I don't want to mess with it more than I have to, because it is so dialed and it catches me multiple 50 inchers every year. But the one thing too about clevises, and I'll go back to spanky baits, is some spanky puts a plastic washer. If you can see that, this little black piece right here is a plastic washer he puts in between his clevises and the first bead. Okay, now what that does is it kind of eliminates the clicking and the grinding, and it makes it a little bit more subtle, but it also extends the life of the clevises themselves. Eventually, if you were to take your standard cowgirl and troll it, you're going to wear the clevises out and it's going to be useless, right? You're going to burn your whole entire bead out, and your bait's not going to be any good anymore. So the plastic washer allows you to fish this bait basically for eternity. These are really good, but if you like trolling bucktails, these are the ones you want to troll with, as well as the Musky Frenzy ones too, because like I say, that one piece clevis spins on that bead smooth and it's never going to wear out. So that's the 2 clevises, or the 2 styles that work for trolling, or just eternal use. If you have that one bait you constantly throw, is going to be the Musky Frenzy one-piece clevis, or the spankies with the plastic washer in between. Now remember, that plastic washer eliminates some sound, eliminates some noise, and is something that can be the difference between catching fish or not catching fish. So little things, guys, definitely add up. All right. Thorn actually just released a new line of bucktails called their Perfect Series. They're a cool little niche group of baits, and they've got what are called speed enhancers, and it's a product made by Leaders from Lures, the same guy that makes my leaders, and it goes right below the clevis, and it actually helps make the blades spin faster, and they start a lot better. Like I say, it's something small. But you know, the bead below your clevises is very, very important sometimes. So pay attention to that. I think those are on the website now. They got some really cool baits. They're basically made for burning. I think they've got like their burner series. They've got some single bladed stuff, double bladed stuff, but really cool baits. Those are just up on the website. I think Kurt rushed to kind of get those done in time for Minnesota. So those are pretty cool. I looked at those. When I go to the store on Wednesday, I'll be grabbing some of those. Oh, the last thing about clevises, this is very important and crucial, is the one thing with the Frenzy clevis as well, especially the double-bladed ones, and I do this a lot, but with the blades being always 180 degrees apart, you can fish these baits super slow at night, slower than any other bucktail, because it doesn't give the blades, or the clevises I should say, an opportunity to collapse. So those blades are always 180 degrees apart. You can fish them a lot slower than any other clevis that's on the market, just due to the one-piece clevis. So that's something that's been really good for me at night, is fishing super slow. And if you need to fish as slow as possible, that Frenzy Clevis is definitely the one you want to reach for. All right, let's talk about bodies or beads, okay? And when I'm talking about bodies or beads, where's my one bait here? So the bodies or beads is basically what builds up the space between your clevis and your blade, and then the start of your skirt. Okay, this one has a lure body. That's what this piece is called right here, lure body, and then it's got 2 beads on the side of it. Now, lure bodies are a little bit different than, say, like the Frenzy stuff or the Spanky stuff. All have beads the whole entire way, solid beads. Now, if they're solid or hollow, that can affect how heavy your bait is and where it runs in the water column. I do think hollow blades have a little bit more shake and shimmy on the wire themselves versus the solid ones. I think the solid ones kind of dim down the vibration, but sometimes that's a good thing. You don't want to be the loudest and most obnoxious bait in the world. I think subtle baits have a really good place in musky fishing, but I don't think a lot of people take advantage of it. I'm a subtle guy. I like my baits a lot more subtle than a lot of anglers, so that's something to look into as well. Oh, also, I forgot, Vibrax Bells, okay? So bells, if you can see this bait here, the bells in the top. This is just a cool little design. You can actually hear it, hopefully. Now this is just a piece, it's honestly a bell. There's a small brass piece in the center there, and then when you get the shake in the wire, this bell will kind of vibrate against that brass piece and kind of gives you a cool sound. So the Vibrax Bells have a time and a place too, but yeah, they're just another option as far as taking up the space in your lure bodies or between your skirt and your blades or your clevises. Oh, and last for the components part is different blade combinations, right? I obviously talked about the Frenzy stuff, like the 8-9 stagger. If you guys have seen anything, I've caught hundreds of muskies on the 8-9 stagger. The new IC9, I actually helped Nick design this bait. But the different blade combinations have that different offset thump. A lot of the companies are kind of following in Nick's footsteps there by coming up with their own blade combinations, and it's something to toy with yourself as well. And like I said, it's good to have a variety of these different baits, different blade combinations, doubles, triples, singles. Singles are really, really good as well. So just having, like I say, an array of this stuff in your boat is super crucial. Bucktails are the most effective way to catch muskies. They catch more muskies than anything, but sometimes you just need the smallest little tweak. Can change your day from 1 fish day to maybe a 4 fish day. But like I said, different blade combinations, whether it's single bladed, double bladed, triple bladed, Indiana, Colorados, willows, or I should say willows and fluteds, whatever combination you can dream of. It's good to have that stuff in your boat. So let's take some questions on that, because that was a lot of stuff right there. A whole lot of information. We basically just tore apart an entire bucktail. So I'm going to go through these real quick and see what we got. Oh, lots of questions here. All right. How much blade variety do you have in the boat? I have a lot of blade variety in my boat. In the back, I've got a big just-in-case box for all my blades, and basically, it's like 3/4 full. I would say I carry somewhere between 150 to 200 bucktails in my boat every day, and then I go home every night. I trailer back and forth, so I've got another way too many baits sitting at my house, and all the components to build anything if I need. But I would say I have at least 200 baits or bucktails specifically in my boat at all times, and I've got a lot of stuff at home as well. But I carry a lot of doubles of things. Importance of colors for bucktails in different waters: brown, green, clear, etc. As far as colors, it's all dependent. I think the first thing I look at when I'm talking about color is, or blade color I should say, is the color of the water. If you're fishing clear water, I like to fish more your blacks, your nickels, maybe white. White's kind of getting popular the last couple of years, more your natural stuff. Otherwise, on the flip side of that, go super bright, super gaudy, maybe your oranges or chartreuse, stuff like that. But then in stained water situations, I always reach for gold or copper, and then black nickel as well is super good. And I think it depends a lot on the sky too. If you got clear days or sunny days, kind of play with that stuff. But it's just all experimental, and having, like I say, a bunch of different options in your boat is super, super key. Do you think the thinner wire helps with sound and shimmy transmit more? Absolutely. Like I say, the thinner wire, higher pitch sound, you're going to get more shake and vibration. That's why I run the wire leaders in front, because I think it adds to the life of the bait. Do different types of blades have different lift? Absolutely. Your willow blades are basically going to be the smallest amount of lift, and your Colorado blades are going to be the largest amount of lift, and then your stuff in between there kind of changes, back and forth. But basically, the thinner your blade is, the less it's going to lift in the water. And also, the thinner thickness of your blade, the higher it's going to ride in the water column. Do I shrink to? We're going to get to shrink tubing back hooks here in a minute. Yes, these baits belong to my wife. I'm up in Canada right now. So I just went and dug through her tackle box to grab a bunch of stuff because I'm not at home with all my stuff. Do you ever cast bucktails behind one of the weed guards I make? So I'm going to experiment with this. I made these weed catchers for trolling last year on Green Bay, and they were super effective. And that's actually, I've had this question a few times. I'm going to play with that this year and see. I know a lot of metro lakes deal with floating weeds. And the weed kit or weed design we came up with, I think, could definitely have a casting variable in it. But I'm going to have to play with that. I want to make them smaller because you're going to be cleaning it every single cast, so I need to change them a little bit. But that is definitely coming, I think. I'm going to play with it. How often am I changing baits? It comes down to confidence. If I'm confident in the bait, I'm going to keep throwing it. If I lose confidence, I'm going to switch. There's sometimes I think people grab a bait, fish for a half hour, they don't see any results, and they throw it down and they grab something, and they get too far away from what's good in that particular place or what's worked for them in the past. Throw your confidence baits. The more confidence you have in your bait, the more fish you're going to catch. If replacing the shaft of the wire, do you suggest always replacing with the same wire diameter? If you're replacing it because it caught a ton of fish, absolutely. If you're cutting it apart because it's not catching any fish, that's something you maybe should look into changing. Maybe you take a bait that's on 0.62 and you put it on 0.45 or 0.51. That's definitely something to play with, for sure. Flash, Marabou, Bucktail, we're going to get to that. Does Jessie get sick of netting all my fish? Absolutely. She's very competitive. Best color combo for Nestor Falls area of Lake of the Woods. If you guys have watched any of my YouTube videos on Lake of the Woods, I basically have a black and green 8/9 stagger welded to the end of my rod. That bait has just been so good for me the last 3 years. What are your feelings on adding a front hook? We're going to get to that in a minute here. Okay, so I think I'm caught up on questions. We're going to get into skirt options, okay? Skirt options. Obviously, you have Tinsel, right? You've got Marabou, and then you've got your deer hair, okay? These different skirt options, I think it's really good to have a bunch of different varieties of them in your boat. Obviously, Tinsel is kind of where everybody's at, or what a lot of the people and companies use, and for good reason. It catches a ton of fish. There's a bunch of cool color options. It's got a bunch of movement in the water. But let me go back to my notes here. So basically, yeah, I'm just talking about Tinsel. Tinsel has a lot of movement, has a lot of flash. And the cool thing with Tinsel is you can add additional skirts and make a larger profile bait. Bait profile is super important. Maybe you're going for a skinny and long profile like we've got going on right here, or maybe you want just a short, tiny little profile. But profile is really important. And I did a video on my YouTube channel last year about building your own baits, and the company that makes my leaders and lures sells a ton of skirts, and they basically supply every big name bucktail company in the industry with all their colors. But you can make your bucktails be as big as you want or as small as you want with the different sizes of skirts. The bigger frenzy baits I know come with 2 skirts. The smaller stuff, they go down to 1 skirt. Spanky stuff, he's got 1 skirt, he's got half skirts, he's got quarter skirts. And then there's some baits that he makes for guys like in St. Clair that have 5 skirts, and it's like a 16-inch bucktail. It's pretty wicked and crazy. So you can play with that, but you know, skirts and profile is the cool thing about Tinsel. You can play with that stuff. Marabou. So Marabou is a pretty cool, a really cool skirt option. Honestly, I like Marabou stuff, specifically, you know, I don't know, the offsetting colors. But Marabou rides a little bit higher in the water column. If you're building your own stuff, I generally put at least 3/4, probably more like 1 ounce of lead in them, because the Marabou does ride a little bit higher in the water column. And I like to have my baits with a good amount of lead in them, so if I want, I can really burn them, and I don't have to worry about them blowing out of the water. So Marabou is cool. There's a bunch of really expensive ties out there. If you see it worth spending the money, that's fine. But there's some really cool stuff that some guys can do with Marabou. The classic Shumway flashers, this is a bunny boo here, have worked really well. I know Frenzy just made some Marabou stuff. Spanky has some Marabou options. But yeah, I think Marabou's a really cool blend of material for your skirt. Deer hair is old school, right? But I think old school is starting to become new school. This is a ghost tail here. I really like ghost tails. The one thing with ghost tails is I do rebuild them, because the back hook itself is put right on the wire shaft. So if you ever have to cut a hook, you have to cut the entire bait apart to replace the hook. So I rebuild them, and then the front hook on a ghost tail is actually the eye of the hook is on the wire itself. So I cut it apart, and then I'll put 2 split rings together and actually put the split rings on the wire, so I can change that out at any point. But bucktail is hollow, okay, so it's going to ride a little bit higher in the water column. It generally gives you a thin profile. Like this, you can see is very slim and very thin. Doesn't have a lot of movement in the water. So the one thing I'll do with a good amount of my deer hair bucktails is I'll add a grub to them, and this goes back to the shrink tubing stuff. So I like to shrink tube all my baits, basically. 99% of my baits have shrink tube on the back. If you guys don't know what shrink tube is, it's this stuff right in the back, so that hook sticks straight out. Now, if you've got any fish coming up behind your bait nipping at it, your hook is as far back as possible, and it's not hanging down at any kind of angle. So shrink tube, like I said, I like on 99% of my baits. The 1% of the time I don't do it is if I'm fishing. I don't have one here, unfortunately. If I'm fishing deer hair, and the one thing with deer hair, like I said, there's not a lot of movement to it, so what I'll do a lot of times is add a 6-inch grub to the back, and then I'll actually remove the shrink tube, or a lot of those baits don't have shrink tube on it, but it actually lets the grub kind of swim in the back, and it kind of kicks one way or the other. But the grub adds a lot of movement and life to the bait itself, and I don't like to add shrink tube to it, because I like to let that grub kind of do its thing back there. But like I say, 99% of my stuff is shrink tubed. And we had a question about that too. So talked about profile. Hooks. Okay, let's talk about hooks. Man. All right, if you guys watch, like I say, my YouTube channel, I'm a hook. I don't know. I kind of go crazy about hooks. I carry a massive box of replacement hooks in my boat at all times. But the thing with hooks is I like to run the biggest hook I possibly can get away with. I mean, you don't want to be putting an 8-aught on a small single skirted bait like this, but 6-aughts I like on even the smallest of baits. I will go to 5-aughts in certain situations, but I'll get to that. But I like 6s and 7s. I like that big hook gap. I think it helps, initially get those fish hooked. Mustads are a super good hook. Eagle Claw makes a great hook. I'm sure what other one I'm missing, one other one, but regardless, hooks. I like to get big hooks with my stuff. If you're getting fish that nip, I like to go, and this is actually something Ron Strand taught me, but I like to go to a 5-aught Eagle Claw. If you look at this hook here, you can kind of see how the tips of the bait kind of curl in just a touch. and that actually helps with keeping those fish that just nip at the back of your bait pinned a little bit better. So I always carry a couple of these in the boat in case that it's one of those days. Last year we had a day in Green Bay, and we had like an 8-hour morning trip, and I think we went 1 for 8 on bites. It was awful. But after we lost a couple, I started throwing on all these eagle claws and sat in the boat for 10 minutes and remade everybody's baits. But 5/0's the smallest I like to go, and that's just with that eagle claw. I like to run the 6/0 and 7/0 stuff if possible. Now, if I need to add an extra hook, someone had mentioned that as well. Nick does it, and Spanky does it the same way I like to do it. Basically, it's just 2 split rings. Okay, 2 split rings right on the shaft of the wire. It's very easy to change this hook out if you need to cut it or replace it. But I like to add a second hook on my bait if possible. So if, maybe on your super small stuff like this, I mean, there's no room to add a second hook. But I know the 8/9 staggers do not come with a front hook. And that's really nice when you're fishing weeds and stuff. But if you're not worried about snagging weeds, or like in Canada where I fish them a lot on rocks or sand, there's nothing there. So I'll add the front hook. I think the more hooks you got on your bait, the better off you are. Spanky comes with their 8/8s actually have a front hook on them right away. But you need to be carrying a box of hooks with you. If you got to cut hooks on your good bait, or if you need to add hooks to your bucktail, that stuff's really important. And I like the 5/0 mustads and the 6/0 mustads. VMC, that's the other hook I couldn't think of. The 7/0 and 6/0 VMCs are a really good hook. Kurt showed me those last year, and I really liked them. But yeah, those front hooks are generally a 5 or a 6. Unless you're getting like 12s, then you might want to do a 7. Hooks. Let's talk about weights. Okay, weights. Obviously, the backbone of these baits, they all have weights in the back of them. This is the new, that new IC9. This comes with a 1 ounce weight. A lot of companies run a 1/2 or a 3/8. And I really don't care for that. I like that Nick runs the heavier weights in here. He runs a lot of 1 ounce and 3/4 ounce stuff. But that being said, if I do add weight, I'll generally carry a lot of 1/4 ounce and 3/8 ounce bell sinkers in my boat, and I'll just add them to those split rings that are on with the front hook. Okay, I like a lot of weight on my bucktails. You can cast them further, you can burn them, and then you can keep them a little bit lower in the water column. So it's really important to carry weights with you. Some stuff, I know some of the Spanky baits have like 2 1/2 ounce or 2 3/8 ounce weights built into them depending on the size of the bait. But yeah, weight's important. If you're building your own stuff, you gotta have if you've got anything like say from 3/8 all the way up to 1.5 ounces, I think are the biggest egg sinkers I carry to be able to make stuff for whatever I want to do with it. Okay, let's go back and do some questions here. Favorite baits? We're gonna stick to bucktails. I guess we can answer that. Favorite baits for blade attachments? I like swim baits with blade attachments are awesome, and then bulldogs. I really like with blade attachments. I know I sound like a broken record, but Frenzy makes their 8/9 stagger in a separate piece. You can just buy that for a dozer kit. I run those a lot. Those work really nice, and it does come with the 1-piece Clevis. It's the best dozer out there. But yeah, I'll run those in front of, like I say, swim baits or bulldogs. Do you consider tinsel size when dialing in your patterns? I haven't. And what he's saying by tinsel size, so a lot of this tinsel is 1/4 inch, and then some of this tinsel is some of it's 16th, some of it's 1/32. A lot of bucktails have 1/32. Some stuff, like some of Nick's stuff, he blends in a 16th inch, or 1/16, I'm sorry, into it, and it all depends. I haven't found anything that's specific to tinsel size, unless you're talking about skirt length, like 7 inches of the skirts I like to tie a lot of, or use a lot of. I buy them from Gene. They come in a 2-pack, they're pre-tied. It's just super easy, hands-on. Throw them on the wire, you're good to go. Have you had much success or confidence in one-piece blades? Like the Kramer brothers. Yeah, so Kramer, and I had Kramer stuff in here before. I don't know. I must have skipped over. But yeah, the Kramer, oh yeah, blade type. I would call the Kramer blade specific to that. It's a one-piece blade. I have some at home. Jesse didn't have any here. But the Kramer blade's very unique. It runs a lot lower in the water column. And it's, like I said, it's a very unique blade, and there's definitely a time and a place for that. I've seen when that blade fishes really, really well. Oh, that's right. We were 2 for 8 that morning, not 1 for 8. Do keel weights really help? It depends. Keel weights will help if you're building a bait that has the big offset blades, like you see some big companies now are putting that big bend in the wire because they're having issues with their baits rolling due to the blade combination. So keel weights can help with that. I've seen it help, like the old school Booker stuff runs keel weights and the Bucktail options, or he runs them in all of his Bucktails, but the Bucktail ones, because the Bucktail skirt will generally want to roll, but that keel weight keeps it so the skirt doesn't roll. So keel weights are good to have. I definitely have some of those in there as well. All right, I think we're caught up on question. Oh, Nolan. Okay, if I get on a figure 8 topic here, it's going to be another 2 hours. Well, Nolan, we'll discuss that when we fish together. It's a 3-hour conversation. I could talk 3 hours about figure 8s. Okay. Weights. Okay, bait order. This is kind of one of the last topics we got here, but the order in which your baits are presented. Now, I've heard people, and I didn't get this question here specifically, but I've had people asking me in the past, how many bucktails can you throw out of one boat? How many people you got in your boat is kind of what I reply to them with. But I've had it on times in Lake of the Woods specifically, or even Green Bay. If the fish are on a specific bait, put on a couple of them, or 3 of them, 4 of them, and go to town. But that's the thing is, all these baits and the little things are so different that you can throw 3 bucktails or even 4 bucktails if you've got room for it at the same fish, and that fish might come in on the 3rd bait, or it might come in on the 2nd bait. Maybe it eats the 1st bait, maybe it comes in on the last guy, or eats the guy in the back of the boat. But and this is something Ron Strand taught me, is you want to be cautious and pay attention to which baits are going through your spot first. And you generally, what Luke taught me is you want to go through your first bait through. Okay, the guy in the front of the boat should have the least aggressive or least invasive bait, I should say, sorry. And this is where the little things kind of start to show up. So here I've got a table full of 8s, 9s, 10s, whatever. But I would say the least invasive bait I have here on the table, even the single bladed stuff, is a 8 Spanky. Okay. Again, why is it the least invasive? 072 wire, very low pitch sound. Plastic washer, it's going to dampen the noise of the Clevis on the beads themselves. 040 blades, very thick blades, not a very high pitch, not going to pull out very far to the side. So I think this would be, in my opinion, should be the first bait through, and why. And Luke explained it to me best, is you don't want that fish to just follow a very big aggressive bait if it's in the front of the boat, because that fish may have ate a smaller bait, okay, to start out with. And get your baits larger and more aggressive or more invasive as you go towards the back of the boat. I had some guys on Lake of the Woods the other year where they were fishing 2 baits and there were 2 bucktails in the front of the boat, and I could not get a fish to come in behind them, and I had to go to a big double 12 bucktail, and then I finally moved some fish after 2 bucktails that already went through there. So smallest, least invasive bait in the front of the boat, biggest set of blades, more invasive in the back of the boat. Now, if you have let's say a set of double 10s, or double 10s on thinner wire, thicker wire, higher pitch sound. I would say higher pitch sound is more invasive than low pitch sound, as well as the blade thickness as well. So kind of watch that, pay attention to that. Like I say, I like to, and it's something just that I learned from a great angler is, and I've seen it pay off for me as well, is the least invasive bait in the front of the boat, most invasive in the back of the boat. And you can fish 3 bucktails. They're not, just because someone's throwing a bucktail in front of you does not mean you can't throw a bucktail behind them. There's nothing wrong with throwing multiple bucktails if that's what they want, give it to them. Just change up your baits with these really small adjustments we talked about as far as the components, and it can definitely put some fish in the bag for you. All right, so if you guys want to ask some more questions, now is the time. But basically, what I wanted to get across to you guys is pay attention to the little things. This is called Advanced Bucktail Strategies for a reason. This isn't, we went really, really in depth. We tore these baits apart, every single component. And like I say, you will, if I'm fortunate enough to spend enough time in the water where I'll see where one little thing here or there, maybe it's the wire diameter, maybe it's the style of clevis will change, you know, how those fish react to it. Building your own stuff is super fun. It's fun to catch fish on baits that you build yourself. If you guys need any of this stuff to build them, Thorn carries everything you could possibly need to build your own bucktails. They've got all the skirts from Gene and all the wire and everything in the store on the website. You guys can do that. I've got a video on my YouTube channel specifically how to build your own bucktails if you guys want to learn how to do it. It's good to have that stuff in your boat if you need to make up another bait because your buddy's got the hot bait and you don't have another one, but if you cut 3 baits apart, you can make one that's very, very similar. But being able to do that and even reshaft your own baits if they get all bent up. If you got a hot bait and you're in the middle of Canada and all of a sudden the bait's bent to the point where it won't even spin anymore, or it breaks the shaft of the wire or something crazy, you need to be able to fix that. So having that stuff is super crucial, really good to have in your boat. As far as, you know, the rest of the stuff, guys, Thorn's doing an awesome sale this weekend, obviously with the Minnesota Musky Expo. They've got all this stuff on sale. Anything that has to do with musky fishing, you can get a really good deal on. There's a ton of really cool bucktails out in the market, obviously. Switch it up, get a couple baits outside your comfort zone. The stag, like I say, if you guys have not fished the staggers, you need to fish the staggers. The spankies are super good. And obviously there's a bunch of other really great hot bait options out there, and Thorn has basically every bucktail on the market in the store on the website. All right, final questions. Let's see. Bend wire back after a fish or replace the wire. How far bend is too bent? That's a good question. So what he's saying is when you pull your bait out of the net or out of the fish, it'll sometimes be bent up. Try and straighten it as much as you can. I've never had a wire shaft break, but if it gets to the point where you can't get the, you know, if you don't have a one-piece clevis and eventually your blades aren't going to spin because of it, obviously you have to reshaft it. But I'd wait as long as possible. That there might be something special about maybe the length of the wire. We didn't get into that, but different lengths of wire have different sounds. You know, if you can keep it the same as long as you possibly can, and that's, I sound like a broken record, but it's another nice piece about the frenzy clevises is they will help your blades spin better than anything. It doesn't matter how kinked up your wire shaft is. When do you use a spinnerbait versus a bucktail? Great question. Spinnerbaits, I like my spinnerbaits really, really heavy. I guess you guys kind of know that from my bucktails, but I like my spinnerbaits heavier, and I think it's just for a different sound vibration. If the other, you know, bucktails aren't working, it's a great thing to reach for. I'm gonna get hammered, but I'm again, Frenzy just came out with a spinnerbait with the one-piece clevis, the 8-9 spinnerbait. I think it's going to be awesome. I got a couple coming from Nick. I'm excited to fish them. I think they're going to be really good. That really hasn't been done before. You know, no one has the one-piece clevis, but the 2 different blades on the spinnerbait arm. And spinnerbait arms have a lot of vibration and shake. They're very, very cool baits, very unique baits. Spinnerbaits are something that are getting more popular, and rightfully so, because they are really good. They're really, really good baits. They catch some really big fish every year, and they're a sleeper bait. What size bell weights? Like I said, 1/4 or 3/8 are the ones I put on there. How does your bucktail approach change on super pressured waters? Kind of all the things we talked about. Just it's playing in all the little things. Start with your retrieve and work through all the components from there. It's just the little things can make it. Lake of the Woods, are you Fishing early July over thick weeds or deeper water over rocks / sand when looking for new water. When I go to Canada, and this is it probably hurts me a little bit, but I go to Canada to fish rocks. I go there. I can't stand fishing weeds in Canada. I can fish all the weeds I want in Green Bay, so I like to stay away from the weeds if possible. And I know there are some big fish in the weeds, but sand I like fishing a lot too. So, all right, you guys must admit. So, in the beginning of this, best size or action rods for bucktails. Like I said, the 10-foot extra heavy is my favorite rod from Thorne Brothers, or just rod in general for throwing 9s, 10s, 12s, and then any of the single bladed like 6s, 7s, double 8s, or even some of the 8, 9 staggers, I'll throw on a heavy -1, 9-foot 11 Thorne Brothers custom as well. All right, I think we've got one last question here, and then we're gonna wrap this thing up. What do you think fishing bucktails will look like 5 years from now? Seems like big blades hit the scene, high-end Marabou popular. And now staggers are the hot bait. What's the future hold? I'm not sure, honestly. I don't know where the future of bucktails are. It seems like, you know, guys keep coming out with really cool stuff that is ahead of the curve and keeps catching more fish, and who knows where it's going to go. I don't know where it's going, but I'm excited to see where it goes. So that wraps up our questions, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something. I hope I didn't overload you with too much stuff. I know this will be going on Thorne Brothers YouTube channel, so if you guys want to go back and ever reference this stuff or go through it, watch it again, you can definitely do that. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and yeah, we're done.